So on today's episode, I'm going to be starting a car that's been in my mom's garage for years, and we'll be going over tips on what to do before you start a vehicle that's been sitting for a really long time. Hey guys, so today we're going to be firing up my 81 Trans Am that has not been started for about 3 years. So today we'll take you through the steps. If you've got an old first gen Challenger or an old car like an old Trans Am like this that hasn't been started in a long time, and the steps that you should take to make sure that you're not going to hurt it while you're starting it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is check the battery and replace it if necessary. Mine was completely dead at this point, so I just went ahead and replaced it. So anybody that tells you that older cars are way better and way easier to work on, they're lying. Old cars might not have as much technology, but the shitty thing about old cars is all the parts are rusted or they're really old. Just trying to tighten up the battery clamps on this thing again, the connector post was so rusted that I just snapped the bolt trying to tighten it. So I'm gonna have to go and get a new clamp and hook that up, which should be like a 5-minute job. Has just turned into an hour round trip to the store and back to get a new post clamp. Cars, they're super cool. So one thing I like to use if I've got an engine that's been sitting for a long time that hasn't been started, like especially over a couple of years, like this has been 3 years since I started this car. Now those cylinders likely don't have any oil in them. They're probably super dry. Over the years the oil's probably dripped out of the cylinders and down into the bottom of the oil pan, which is fine. But before I start it, I'm going to use this, and that is fogging oil. So I'm going to take out each spark plug in each cylinder and spray a little bit of this fogging oil directly into the cylinder to make sure that that cylinder is lubricated, so that when I go to turn it over, it's not just metal on metal contact, and it should fire up just fine after that. It's always better to be safe than sorry in that case, especially when it hasn't been started in a really long time. So once you get your spark plugs out, now would be a good time to check what kind of condition they're in, if there's oil on them, what kind of gap they've got. Just see what overall condition they're in before you put them back in and fire it up. Okay, that's the last one. So now we'll check our fluids, make sure we've got enough engine oil, it's in okay shape, make sure we've got enough coolant in the rad, and that should be enough that we can start it. Beauty, she's full. Ooh, that looks fairly empty, which is not good. Definitely use more coolant. Okay, so now that our fluids are all topped up, We put some fogging oil in all of the cylinders so they all have lubrication, they're not all dried out anymore. We double checked all our spark plugs, made sure all our wires were hooked up back properly. Everything should be good. Let's give it a shot and fire it up. It's a carbureted engine, so we're gonna have to pump it a few times. See if we can get some gas going into that carb. And let's give it a shot. Close. Well, there she is in all her beauty. There's just something kind of inherently cool about carbureted cars, you know? Anyways, let's get some fuel in that bad boy and see if we can get her to fire right up. She doesn't appear to be getting fuel. Every time it'll start as soon as I put gas directly in the carburetor, but other than that, it doesn't seem like we're getting any fuel. When it's been sitting this long, I'm probably gonna have to check the fuel pump, see if the fuel pump went on me. That's gonna be my first place I'm gonna check. Okay, so it appears that the carb's not really getting any fuel, so what I did is pulled the fuel line off the front of the carb, and we're just going to try to crank it and see if any fuel comes out of there. If fuel's coming out of there, that means our fuel pump is still pumping, and we can look elsewhere as to why it's not getting fuel. Maybe just bad fuel, or maybe the filter's plugged. But I'm thinking that the fuel pump itself has totally dried out. Yep, give it a shot. Whoa! Shut her off. Okay, we're getting fuel. Okay, so we now have verified that by pulling our fuel line off here, that it is kicking out fuel when we do try to start it. So we know that our fuel pump is okay. So now the next culprit is going to be, there's a fuel filter right in here inside the front of the carb. That fuel filter is probably all plugged up from sitting for so long. So we're going to give that a shot, take out the fuel filter, and see if that is our problem. Okay, so now we replaced the fuel filter, put a little bit of gas in the carb. So now, in theory, that should be all that's blocking the fuel from getting into the carburetor and keeping this thing running. So let's give it a shot and fire it up. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. If you guys have any other cool old cars, whether they're Mopars or something else, let me know down in the comments section below what you guys are working on, what projects you guys are tackling. Next episode coming up next, we're doing a major overhaul on the rear suspension on the Challenger RT. So stay tuned for that. If you guys like this episode, you like the content, please leave a like, please click subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Cheers.